I'm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Stay tuned to hear about America's other man of steel, George Washington asking pretty please, and the time when the price of the whiskey was too damn high. In the mid-1700s, the French Empire claimed French Canada and Louisiana, which was basically the state of Louisiana up through the entire Midwest. The British claimed the eastern part of what's now the United States. So just based on geography, things were going to come to a fight. Then the government of the colony of Virginia found out that the French were building forts in the Ohio country, named because the Ohio River passes through it. And the Ohio River starts right here in Pittsburgh. Two rivers converge here, the Allegheny and the Monongahela, to make the Ohio River. And as we've talked about, rivers being important to transport and trade, controlling this area is super important. A 21-year-old George Washington was sent up here with an eviction notice, basically asking the French to leave their forts. You won't be shocked to hear that the French were like, thanks, but no thanks. Several years later, Washington was sent again with a detachment of men to take over the fort at Pittsburgh. This action ignited what we know in the United States as the French and Indian War, a struggle for this area. The French and Indian War eventually developed into a global struggle for supremacy between the French and British empires, largely known as the 7 Years' War. Some historians have maybe jokingly called it World War Zero because it was probably one of the original global wars. Later that century, the United States became independent and set to the task of governing. Though the revolution had been sparked by gripes about taxation, the new country realized they had to collect taxes. Now, farmers raising grain usually had extra grain, and what they would do with that is distill it into spirits, like whiskey. The new government of the United States thought, hey, why don't we just tax that whiskey? People out here in western Pennsylvania didn't like that. Partly because they just liked whiskey, but also because whiskey was almost used as a currency out here. So it was really hitting their finances. Men in this area took up arms and attacked tax collectors, sometimes tarring and feathering them. The first president of the United States, that same George Washington, brought a force here to quell the rebellion. This rebellious spirit would live on for Pittsburgh's later history, but more on that soon. Pittsburgh later became a huge center of industry, primarily coal and steel. It was the quintessential industrial town with smokestacks everywhere, billowing smoke from the various factories. And working conditions, as was common in this era in factories, were grim. Workers started to organize, started to unionize, and it was pretty impressive because this was also a hotbed of huge immigration. So I went to a museum yesterday where you see these huge papers and leaflets printed in the various languages, Croatian, Polish, Italian, German, all helping to organize these workers. These migrants were coming from about the 1880s to the 1920s, but a little earlier, in 1877, there was a railroad strike here. The bosses had decided that they were going to cut pay, lay people off, and make some efficiency changes that would make a lot of jobs obsolete. The workers decided to strike. Police were called in, but most of the police, being local, were hesitant to do violence to the strikers, specifically also because some of the strikers were part of their family or people that they knew. The Pennsylvania National Guard was called in, partly because they wouldn't know the people that they were going to hurt, and of course started firing on the crowd, killed about 20 people. This outraged everybody in Pittsburgh, and they immediately started looting gun shops to get armed. They started fighting back, and the National Guard was already going to retreat, but their retreat was very difficult because people started firing on them from second floor windows and other areas. I saw a street plaque that commemorates one of the heroes of this fighting back against the National Guard, known as Pat the Avenger. He's never really been proven to have existed, but story goes that he methodically would step out of windows like a soldier and fire at the National Guard, probably picking off a few of them. Later in the era of steel and coal, I mentioned immigrants were pouring in, and they started moving into the hills of the surrounding areas. These hills have very rich coal seams. So some of these immigrants actually did personal mining. They're called kitchen mines. Literally mining coal from under their house as deep as natural oxygen was available. It seems that Pittsburgh is fond of its legendary characters because the steelworkers also created their own folk hero, a guy named Joe Magarac or Magarats. No one really knows how the character developed. It might have been folk stories, it might have been a particularly imaginative author, but this Joe Magarac was sort of like a John Henry type, which meant that he was often said to work 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, having output of steel that was superhuman. Later it got even weirder, where some people believe that he was actually literally made of steel and lived forever because he would morph into shape of a steel back to human. I have no idea if people actually believe this stuff, but he's taken as sort of a symbol for Pittsburgh. So you'll see likenesses of a big brawny guy working on steel all around the city. But as I mentioned, these factories made tons of smoke and air pollution, leading one author to describe Pittsburgh as hell with the lid off. In the mid-20th century, Pittsburgh cleaned up its act, and here there are museums where you can see side-by-side pictures of the smoky air and then the after when they cleaned it all up. Of course, steel being so important to Pittsburgh, it's been the inspiration for the football team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. After World War I, the former European empires were being carved up into independent countries. It was decided that the Czech and the Slovak people would form one nation called Czechoslovakia. Because this place here in Pittsburgh was a hub for Czech and Slovak immigrants, the agreement to form Czechoslovakia was signed right here in Pittsburgh. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you learned something. It is so humid out here. Remember to bring shorts and short sleeve shirts.